Well, the grace and the mercy and the love and the light of Christ is yours in Jesus Christ our Savior. There's an outline if you'd like to jot notes and follow along, or if you're looking in your Bible, Isaiah chapter 60 is what we're going to look at. We're observing Epiphany. Epiphany, I dated a girl who was Serbian in high school, and so she was part of that Eastern Orthodox, that Serbian Orthodox Church. Their Christmas was Epiphany. On September 6th, kind of the 12th day of Christmas. There's a whole bunch of things that kind of tie into that. But we're observing Epiphany today on the 8th of January. It's interesting because this passage that we have, arise and shine, for your light has come. And that's really the theme of Epiphany. That's what that word means. Epiphany is about revealing, because light is shining on something. And Isaiah wrote this about 700 years before the birth of Christ. Okay, that was a prophecy, and it was a dark time in the nation of Israel. They were being threatened from all sides, from different nations were trying to overtake them, overcome them. They had great fear that the nation would be wiped out. They were already a nation that was divided into two. And so in the midst of a very, very dark, despairing time, God gives these words to the prophet, arise and shine. Your light has come. The glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. What's interesting is those words did not come true for them in that moment. It didn't really fulfill until at least 500, and you could argue even 700 years later when the Christ was born, when the Messiah was born. But about 500 years later was one of the darkest times in all of Israel's history. And it's intriguing because this was a conqueror, a king, who took the name Light. Where Isaiah said, arise and shine, your epiphany has come. The light has come. 500 years later, a Greek king named Antiochus Epiphanes, get the word? Epiphany, Epiphanes. He called himself that. It means his name was Antiochus, and Epiphanes was the title that he gave himself, which meant, I'm the bringer of light. And so he came and conquered the nation of Israel among many of the other conquests, and then proceeded to horribly defile the temple, sacrificed a pig on the altar in the Holy of Holies in the temple of Jerusalem, defiled the temple, conducted pagan rituals and so forth in there, and the people of Israel were devastated. But a group rose up. And in fact, the story that arises out of that is where we get the season of Hanukkah. It's also about light, but a different kind of light. Where Antiochus, for that Greek ruler, he wanted all the light to point to him. He was not the one who brought light. He was the one who wanted the spotlight turned on him. And God does light differently than that. God is the source of light and shines his light upon us. Now that's a double-edged sword, isn't it? That's a little bit of a double-edged sword. But so today, what I want to talk to you about is two things, really, a birth and light. Because the passage in Isaiah really talks about a birth. Isaiah has already previously in chapter 9 said, unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. Here in chapter 60, he talks about the light has come. The glory of the Lord rises upon you. Nations will be drawn to it. And so it's acknowledging that there's a real darkness. So I wanted to share this story with you. It's kind of a legendary story. Please don't quote me as if this is just kind of a fun story. If you go to Snopes.com, they'll debunk it and all of that. But it's interesting because I like the argument that's made. It's set in a university classroom, and this college professor decides to kind of debunk Christianity, right? We're going to show you that Christianity is false. So he asked the question to his class, does evil exist? Student bravely stood up and said yes. The university professor challenged his students and said, did God create everything that exists? A student said, yes, he did. God created everything? The professor said. Yes, sir. The student replied, well, if God created everything, then God created evil. Because evil exists, and according to the principle that our works define who we are, then God must be evil. The student became quiet, didn't know how to respond. Well, the professor was really pleased with himself, and he boasted to the students that once again, to a new class, he had proven that the Christian faith was a myth. Well, another student then raised his hand and said, can I ask you a question, Professor? And he said, of course. The student stood up and said, Professor, does cold exist? Does cold exist here? The professor said, well, what kind of question is that? Of course it exists. Haven't you been cold? The student snickered at the young man's question. The young man replied, in fact, sir, cold does not exist. According to the laws of physics, what we consider cold is in reality the absence of heat. Every body or object is susceptible to study when it has or transmits energy, and heat is what makes a body or matter have or transmit energy. Absolute zero is the total absence of heat. All matter becomes inert and incapable of reaction at that temperature. Cold does not exist. We have created this word to describe how we feel when there is no heat. The student continued, Professor, how about this one? Does darkness exist? The professor said, well, of course it does. The student replied, once again, you're wrong. Darkness does not exist either. Darkness is in reality the absence of light. Light we can study, but not darkness. In fact, we can use Newton's prism to break white light into many colors and study the various wavelengths of each color. You cannot measure darkness. A simple ray of light can break into a world of darkness and illuminate it. How do you know how dark a certain space... Okay, I'm going to stay on track. Really, I'll be good. Hurry up. It's going, come on. How can you know how dark a certain space is? You measure the amount of light present. Isn't this correct? Darkness is a term used by man to describe what happens when there's no light. Finally, the young man said, I have a third question for you. Does evil exist? Well, now uncertain, the professor responded, well, I've already told you that evil exists. We see it every day. It's in the daily example of man's inhumanity to man. It is in the multitude of crime and violence everywhere in the world. These manifestations are nothing else but evil. To this, the student replied, you can see where this is going, right? Evil does not exist, sir, or at least evil does not exist unto itself. I appreciate that. That's an important thing. Evil is simply the absence of God. It is just like darkness and cold, a word that man has created to describe the absence of God. God did not create evil. Evil is not like faith or love that exists just as does light and heat. Evil is the result of what happens when man does not have God's love present in his heart. It is like the cold that comes when there is no heat, or the darkness that comes when there is no light. And the professor sat down. Anyway, legendary story. And again, I don't know if all the physics and everything is right on that, and even the theology we could debate and argue a little bit. We do know there is evil, but the evil that we know as described in Scripture is because there is no God there. It is a place where people have said, I want nothing to do with God. And God is removed from the equation. Darkness in a similar way, and that's why the prophet's words, I hope, are powerful to us today. We experience darkness. We experience darkness because there is an absence of light. We experience darkness where we ourselves sometimes have prevented and blocked light from coming. Or others may have prevented light from coming. Or where God has been told to take a hike. There are some times in our lives where we have portions of our heart, portions of our life, where we say, that's a room, Lord, I don't want you to enter. I'm going to close that off. That's a dark spot. That's a place where God is not allowed in. Wherever God is allowed in, there is light and there is no darkness. And so Epiphany is a season in which God, with love and joy and with strength and adamantly says, I long to bring light here to you, and it's associated with the birth of a child. So we're still celebrating Christmas because Jesus Christ, that infant Messiah in the manger, is the bringer of light, is the light of God. So there are 4 points I want to share with you here about birth. So the first thing when we talk about birth is coming out of darkness, isn't it? That is a small dark room that baby is in. And you may have heard that legendary story. I already read you a long one. I don't want to read you another one. But it's an interesting story. You may have heard that one about the twins that are in the womb. And the one is like, do we go out? Do we not go out? I like it in here. It's warm. It's nice. I know everything. I understand everything. And the other one is anxious to go out and say, there's a big world out there. There's something new. We don't know what it's like. We should go out. And the baby bursts into the light. And the joy and the wonder of standing in the light. We can stand in the darkness. In the darkness of the womb, that baby is fed, doesn't have to do anything for itself, just kind of exists. Just kind of exists. But going out into the light means filling your lungs with air and your eyes processing the beauty and the things that are around us, our skin, our hands touching, feeling the embrace of a parent, of a loved one, feeling the cold on our skin and the warm of the blanket, to do all those things which God designed us to do. In the womb, in the darkness, we are not doing those things which God designed us to do. But in the light, which is sometimes not easy, it's wonderful. You can see your way and you can find your way, but in the light, everything about us is revealed also, isn't it? And so that's the double-edged sword of the light. So the first point that I'm saying is birth is out of darkness because darkness cuts off and conceals. Look at what Jesus says. John said it in John chapter 1, right? He came into a world that did not receive him, even though it was his own world, even though he had made it. In John chapter 3, Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, and look at what he says. But people love darkness instead of light because their deeds will evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light. That's strong words. Love the darkness. Not like, well, reluctantly, periodically use the darkness so that our worst stuff wouldn't get noticed. No, it says, they love the darkness, baby. That's great stuff. We need more darkness. Hide more stuff. That's how Jesus is describing it. And they hated the light because it revealed where their brokenness was and where their hurt was. And yet the joy and the mercy of God is that he already knows all those things. He already knows all those things that supposedly or theoretically we thought we could hide or we could stack away or stuff under the bed or stick in the closet or that we could do when no one else was looking or whatever it was. God already knows all those things and still longs to bring a healing light to us, a healing touch. So while darkness can cut off and conceal, if we're honest with ourselves, there are times when we long for that, times when we embrace it. And so this light is to call to us and say, the darkness does not even exist. It is simply where I am not. And so we're longing to bring God into those places. Second thing about a birth. Oh, wait, I got to say this point too. It's really interesting to me, isn't it? Birth comes out of darkness, right? But there's a spiritual touch there too. Our Roman Catholic brothers and sisters and so forth, this is not an argument that I have with them, but it's interesting because it's a tradition that developed that Mary was sinless. And I think that's unfortunate that that has been taught, because the real miracle of the birth of Christ is that in that combination of deity and humanity, we have the fullness of God, which brings Jesus his perfection, but has the humanity which comes out of a woman who acknowledges her own humble condition. In the Magnificat, Mary says that. How could God choose me? I'm nobody. I'm a peasant. I'm a nobody. In my humble condition, he chose me. Out of darkness, God comes and brings light. So if you're experiencing hurt, if you're experiencing loss, if there are times when you look down the road to the future and you don't know what tomorrow will bring and you are fretting and you are fearing, I am telling you, out of that darkness, God is longing to birth light. He stands in that place already, bearing light. Okay, second thing. So we went down south for a few days. It was great. I played golf, 72. It was sweet. And then I came back here, and it's cold. Boy, is it cold. So anyway, but one of the things we did while we were away, we said we'd go see a movie every day. So it was really cool. We saw Passengers and Rogue One, and I saw Sing. That's cool. Sing is fun. We saw Collateral Beauty. We saw like 5 movies. And it was a gas. And I love going to movies. If you know me and my family, we kind of love to go to movies. But it's funny, so when we're watching movies sometimes, you ever watch a movie where it's a real tense part, or it's a thriller, or it's a spy thing, or it's even a little scary movie, and they're in this situation, and they go in the house, it's dark, right? It's dark, and what do you say when they go in there? Turn on the light, right? What are you doing? They walk past 5 light switches. I'm going, hello, turn on the light. Somebody's going to die here, right? And they don't turn on the light. And the irony to me is, as followers of God, we walk past too many light switches. We turn on the light, and we walk right by them. And so in this second point, when we talk about birth as the light of the world, the Lord rises upon you, his glory appears over you. Here I am. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Because the challenge is when you turn that on, that light's going to penetrate and it's going to reveal. It's going to reveal our need, but it's going to reveal our hope. It reveals the path to righteousness that Christ has won for us. It reveals our hurt and his healing touch. And I'll tell you what, the birth of a child reveals a lot about us too, doesn't it? It revealed a lot about me as a parent. It revealed how wonderful my dear wife was as a parent. The birth of a child reveals a lot about us. Remember how it is with babies, right? I don't know about you, I was in a generation when we had a baby book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. Okay, do they still have that book? Okay, good. That's good. It's probably changed, We use paper towels for diapers, Is that different now? Yeah, anyway, so but when you read that book, and my wife made me read that chapter after chapter. I had to read. We studied, we went to classes, we're in support group, how do you do this thing? I'm saying to my wife, they've been doing this for a few years, having babies and all that. No, we got to go to the class, and so you're anticipating and you're practicing and you're building the nursery and you're making sure everything is right and the paint and the wallpaper and everything is perfect. We've bought all. Have you seen that ad recently now with the first baby? The mom, she has all her stuff in the living room and it's just filled and she's got a great big stroller and she's making sure she's got lunch and this and that and this stuff and extra diapers and clothes and change and then walks out and leaves the baby behind. Right? Have you seen that one? And then the next one is the second child, because this is how it is, right? We're freaking out, anticipating having a baby. Then we have that first baby. It's like a porcelain doll. It's like this China doll. What do we do? Oh, my gosh. You wake up at every breath, and by the second child, you're like scooping up Cheerios off the floor with your feet and feeding them to them for lunch, And so, but the birth of a child reveals a lot about us, about our patience, about our sense of responsibility, that there's somebody else who I'm accountable for and to, other than myself. The birth of a child reveals a lot, but a birth of a child, point number 3, is also a time to celebrate. To be honest, I love that light reveals. Do I always love what it reveals? No. But it shows me the true thing, not the thing that's hiding in the shadow, or the thing that I can manipulate or speculate or try to change, but rather it reveals clearly how God will heal me. And so a birth is also a time to celebrate as that light comes. The prophet tells him, you'll look and be radiant, your heart will throb, you'll swell with joy. You have enlarged the nation, you have increased their joy, for to us a child is born. Birth brings joy. Birth is a culmination of dreams and hopes and planning. Birth brings unity of purpose. Parents, you get with me on that? If mom and dad ain't together on this one, we got a problem. Birth brings a unity of purpose for what our hopes are, how God has entrusted this child to us. Here is a miracle. God has entrusted that child to humanity as well. God entrusted himself into the hands of humanity so that we might be unified in our purpose. And you know what's interesting? At the birth of a child, I have some relatives, and they are blessed with some recent children, and all we get on Facebook about every 2 hours is posting more photos of this baby. I like babies and all, okay, but enough's enough already. But no, and it lasts till they're like 5. So I just constantly get this stream of, but you know what? It's their life. It's occupying, it's their focus, it's their purpose. They are excited. They're all about it. And every once in a while I catch myself and I go, you know what? Sometimes my attitude about that baby in the manger at Bethlehem is like the other one. Enough already? What do you want, my whole life? What, you want me to be consumed by you? You want me to post photos of you every hour? Yes. The answer is yes. To be consumed by Christ in unity of purpose so that all light can be brought to bear on the baby. All light brought to bear on the baby, who in fact is the light of the world. I was thinking theater thoughts this week. Are you familiar with the term scrim? I want to describe this to you. A backdrop in a theater, and we've used it effectively over the years in college and in high schools and so forth. It's a wonderful tool. Scrim is a piece of fabric that, depending upon how you throw the light on it, it either is completely transparent, virtually transparent, or it's kind of translucent, or it can be completely opaque, like a wall. But it's cool in a theater application, and you can use light skillfully on it. If the light is really shining beautifully on the person behind there, it's as if there's nothing in front of them. I mean, it's an amazing kind of thing. You get my point on this? Can you see where I'm headed with this? If you shine that light on that thing, you can hide it. But if you shine that light on that thing, it stands out in full display for all to see. Folks, I think this is a cool... we are the scrim. We're the scrim. And if we choose to ignore Christ or want to hide him, you can hide him. But I want my life, and I pray that you long for your life, to shine light right on that. I mean, to allow that light to shine. Because it's not the scrim that's shining the light. It's the light which comes through it. And so the point number 4 on this is we talk about Epiphany and the light of the world which has come to bring light to us. The light shines through us. It's not about us. It's not pointing on us. It's pointing on him. So imagine this last point, last thing I want to share with you. Hopefully this will help it tie together and make sense. You know, you go to a person and they come up to your coworker or someone and says, "Hey, we just had a baby. You want to see the pictures?" And, you know, all the ladies here are going, "Yes, of course I do." And the guys are all going, "Oh, great. Okay, yeah, fine." So imagine if the guy comes out and he pulls out this wad of pictures and you go, this is going to take 30 minutes. And so, okay, you're stealing yourself, and he shows you, opens the book, opens his little picture book, and there's a beautiful picture of the baby on the front. And then the next picture is a picture of him surfing, and the next picture is a picture of the dad and the mom, I don't know, having dinner, and the next one is they're at a movie, and the next one is they're snowboarding, and the next one is they're skiing, and you're sitting there and you're going, "Where's the baby?" Nobody does that, right? If you have a baby and you pull out your wallet, it's full of pictures of the baby. It might be pictures of the baby with you and with others and so forth, but it's always pictures of the baby. That's what our life is to be. Pictures of the baby. Pictures of the Jesus who has loved us and who longs to be with us. Now, here's the coolest part. Because when you go to Jesus and he comes and he says, "I got some pictures to show you. Want me to show you?" He pulls them out and they're all pictures of you. Not pictures of himself. They're all pictures of you. What a joy for us to have our wallet full of pictures of him, because he has a wallet full of pictures of you. To God be the glory. May he bring light. Amen.